Today we are presenting the final audit outcomes report for the year 2012.
Well, thank you. Thank you indeed very much for this opportunity. For the Press Club, indeed, it's always an important occasion to have a session like this. To a large extent, what does the report essentially places emphasis on? Certainly, as usual, the report does place a lot of emphasis on the fact that we do need to sustain the way in which we manage the administration of government so that the audit outcomes are also equally sustainable. We're talking here about a report that is showing a regression broadly of the audit outcomes when it comes to clean audits. But to a large extent, what makes us comfortable is the response that we are receiving in relation to the action that has happened since these reports were out and these results were out. We have had a resounding 78% success in meeting ministers and MSCs, premiers, more than 3 times a year. And that has created a platform where we have discovered ourselves. We have had an opportunity to discover those obstacles and those stumbling blocks that have given rise to the regression that we talk about here. We are still seeing a need to focus on 5 areas that require our biggest concentration. Certainly, the issue of service delivery, or what we call annual performance plans. The other one, naturally, is the area of supply chain management, what is commonly known as procurement or tenders, as is known by others. Here, once again, is an area where it gives rise to a number of images in our reporting, which in fact is basically confirming what Treasury has prescribed to be reported, which is if things are done in a manner that is inconsistent with the rule of law, that then renders that transaction irregular. We are there to support the implementation of some of these messages so that we make sure that we rather work on preventative measures while we're intensifying on the detective measures through the internal controls within government. Issues of human resource capacity in government is a third issue that is important to take cognizance of. Here, this is where our emphasis is focusing on the need to have a culture of professionalism within government, a culture that will basically guarantee that good things will always be associated with the public sector. IT being one of the biggest tools of trade, which is used by government to do its business, is one area that does need strengthening. I think lastly, the area that I just want to touch on is an area of finance and the accuracy of the information that is provided when it comes to financial reporting. We're still finding a lot of instances where information that is provided and presented for scrutiny by us as auditors needs a lot of correction at the time of audit. This is where we are just saying the basic controls seem to be the clear indication of a problem when it comes to this area. Because if all those daily controls, monthly controls, quarterly controls, which are necessary in the financial administration, are in place, were in fact observed, we shouldn't have a situation where a lot of time is spent correcting information. The intention is to make sure that we also, as an audit office, provide some information in advance. One good example of this was to look at the way and the timing of our audit interventions. If you look at the information on service delivery, we have always audited this after the event. So when you find information that is not as necessarily relevant and useful for what the department should have done, there's nothing the department can do about it. So we're now looking at an arrangement where at least the areas of usefulness, comparison of this information with budgets and the mandates of the department, to make sure that it's relevant, it's useful in response to the resources of the government. We do that upfront so that at the time the APPs are considered by the departments and eventually considered by Parliament, we have also had our own input into that, rather than coming with that input after the event when the horse is already bolted. And in that respect, we've produced a little booklet which is inserted in these reports, which is the first step to providing a guide to what is the responsibility of Parliament when something has not been done properly, or when something has been done properly, to make sure that the rewards do flow. So there's a little booklet that looks like this, which is part of the pack. As I say, there's a lot that needs to be done on this. This is just the first cut. And working with the Minister of Public Service Administration, there's a lot that needs to be done to make sure that all the current legislative prescripts are properly articulated, properly rolled out, and properly understood. So this is one of the attempts we've made on our side, but it's just complementing what exists in government as well. So I hope, Honourable Frolick, that we close the chapter on the questions we normally get in Parliament when the report makes this report to say, so who should take the responsibility for these omissions? It becomes obviously funny when that question is asked in Parliament, when Parliament is supposed to be the one that is actually assuming that responsibility. So I think this book, to a large extent, will actually help to identify the prescripts that guide parliamentarians in executing that responsibility. Once again, to the ministers and Honourable Frolick, thanks very much for making the time to be with us here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the point that I want to emphasize right from the beginning is a message I sent to the Auditor-General, that I'm here in the capacity of the category Best Supporting Actress. So I'm here to support the Auditor-General as he reports to you, so my remarks will be very brief. I want to say that the Auditor-General has done exceptional work, and over the time of his stewardship at the helm of the Auditor-General's office, we have seen a decisive shift to accountability in the financial matters of the state. I have taken note of the report of the Auditor-General and underlined all of those matters that he is concerned about, that we would need to fix, and we're dealing with those matters. And we will, on a regular basis, update the country on what we're doing about those matters.
Last year, we issued a report from Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, which we called, which is in the program, which we call the Management Performance and Assessment Tool, which looks at the actions themselves as they happen on the spot and give us a sense of what are the problems which are confronting the state. We did 103 departments, both provincial and national, out of 158. We are completing the rest, but the next report will be issued in around June, mid-year this year. If you look at that report, that looks at the actions of managers and the administration. It's almost consistent with the results of those actions as it comes out of this report. Not exactly the same, because we're measuring different things altogether. But it is clearly, there's a clear link. We still have to study the report in detail and to see what type of interventions we are supposed to deal with.
Minister Sisulu, Minister Shabane, and the Auditor-General, thank you for the opportunity, Auditor-General, for Parliament to be part of these proceedings. It is indeed the institution of parliaments around the world to be responsible for exercising oversight over the executive and also to keep the government departments accountable. In terms of the oversight and accountability model, various flaws and shortcomings was identified in how Parliament exercises its oversight. And a range of issues and measures have been put in place, which we are implementing now, to strengthen the oversight function. And we realized, Minister, that it's indeed a multi-pronged approach that will ensure that we improve accountability as far as the state fiscus is concerned.
Mr. Nombembe, out of interest's sake, who scrutinizes your books, and how have you performed? How have your office performed in the past 3 years? Thank you.
Maybe just a quick response to that. We also do, submit an annual report to Parliament, a strategic plan to Parliament. And all these things that we talk about, we also subject ourselves to. And they do get scrutinized by independent auditors, who, by the way, don't do work on our behalf. That's the kind of safeguard we put in place to make sure that whoever audits us doesn't have the expectations of getting more work from us. So whoever audits us does not do work for government on our behalf. So we've also got audit committees, internal auditors, and all these structures and everything that we're recommending here. Yeah. And up to now, we have been achieving consistently clean audits.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Nombembe, Mr. Makwetu, and all the senior officials from the Auditor General's office. I believe some of them will be around a little bit more if you have technical questions. Minister Sizulu, Minister Chabane, Mr. Frolik, thank you so much.